Okay, so the EU's AI Act, it's huge, right? It's a massive piece of legislation. But today, we're going to zero in on one crucial but maybe kind of overlooked part, Article 32. Now, I know, it sounds super technical, but I want you to think of it as the secret engine that's designed to make this whole idea of trustworthy AI actually, well, work.
So, this was the fundamental puzzle that the EU regulators were facing. Just imagine the sheer number of high-risk AI systems hitting the market. We're talking about stuff in medical devices, in cars, our energy grids, you name it. How on earth do you make sure every single one is safe and respects our rights without creating this massive regulatory traffic jam that just grinds innovation to a halt?
So here's how we're going to break down their solution. First, we'll dive into that high-risk challenge. Then we'll look at the really clever solution that Article 32 offers. After that, we'll get into the harmonized standards that make it all tick. And finally, we'll see what this all means for the future of the AI market as a whole.
Right, so let's start with just the scale of the problem. We are not talking about a handful of AI models here. We're talking about a flood of specialized systems that are embedded in products and services that are absolutely critical to our lives and our safety.
I mean, really think about it. An AI that helps diagnose diseases, one that's managing a power grid, or maybe one that's controlling a self-driving car? Every single one of those is a high-risk system. Having regulators inspect each and every one of them from the ground up, it would be impossibly slow, incredibly expensive, and probably really inconsistent. The EU needed a smarter way, a more scalable system.
And this is where Article 32 comes in with a really clever legal tool. It's called the Presumption of Conformity. It's actually a concept the EU has used successfully in other areas for years, and now they're bringing it into the world of AI. So what does that actually mean? Well, essentially, instead of having to prove your AI system is safe from scratch every single time, you can just show that it was built following a pre-approved, officially recognized technical blueprint. We call that a harmonized standard. If you follow that blueprint, your system is presumed to be compliant with the law. It's kind of like a legal shortcut, but it's one that's built on a foundation of trust in that blueprint. And when you put them side by side like this, wow, the difference is just night and day. The old way is this massive uphill battle for every single innovator. But the AI Act's approach, it creates a clear, repeatable path. You're shifting from reinventing the wheel every single time to using a trusted, well-engineered design, and that just dramatically cuts down on the red tape.
But of course, you can't just have companies grading their own homework, right? The system relies on these highly specialized independent third-party auditors. They're called notified bodies, and their job is to be the expert referee, to audit the AI system and verify that it really does conform to that standard. They're basically the gatekeepers of this whole streamlined process.
All right, so that naturally leads us to these blueprints. What exactly is a harmonized standard, and where do they even come from? This is really the practical heart of the entire system.
You know, this analogy just hits the nail on the head. It captures the relationship perfectly. The AI Act sets the big, high-level goals, things like safety, accuracy, and fairness. But it doesn't get into every single technical detail. The harmonized standards, they provide those details. They translate the legal requirements into concrete specifications that engineers can actually use to build things.
So officially, a harmonized standard is a technical document that's created by one of the official European standardization organizations, or ESOs. These are the groups that bring together all the experts from industry, from academia, other stakeholders, to agree on these detailed specs for everything from toy safety to medical gear. And once a new standard for AI gets published in the EU's official journal, bam, it becomes a recognized way to show you're complying with the law.
And these standards, they don't just appear out of thin air. It's a really rigorous multi-step process. First, the European Commission identifies the need for a standard. Then, the technical experts at the ESOs get to work drafting it. And this is crucial. It then goes out for tons of feedback from a whole range of stakeholders, industry, academics, even civil society groups, to make sure it's both balanced and practical. Only then is it finalized and published.
What's really fascinating when you look at the history here is how stable this core idea has been all through the AI Act's legislative journey. It actually started out as Article 33A way back in 2022, and while the numbering and some of the wording got tweaked for clarity, that fundamental principle of relying on harmonized standards, it never wavered. That shows you there was a really strong consensus on how important this was.
Okay, so let's zoom out. What does this all mean for the bigger picture? Because this framework isn't just about ticking boxes for compliance. It is a strategic move to shape the entire AI market, not just in Europe, but maybe even beyond.
The key thing to get here is that this system creates a kind of virtuous cycle. It unifies the market, so if your AI is compliant, you can sell it across all 27 member states. It lowers the barrier to entry for innovators by giving them a clear playbook to follow. And that, in turn, builds trust, which creates a predictable environment that encourages people to invest. And, it just might position the EU's approach as a model for the rest of the world to follow.
And ultimately, that is the EU's big bet here. The goal isn't just to regulate AI. It's about creating a brand for Made in Europe AI that really stands for reliability, safety, and a respect for human values. In a world that's getting more and more nervous about AI's risks, that brand of trust, that could become a huge competitive advantage. Just imagine a European medical AI company winning a global contract precisely because its safety is certified under this trusted framework, beating out competitors who just can't offer that same guarantee.
And that leaves us with the really big question, doesn't it? This whole system, Article 32, the notified bodies, the harmonized standards, it's a detailed blueprint for how to build trust into a technology market at a massive scale. And as other countries are wrestling with these exact same challenges, you just have to wonder, has the EU just set the global standard?